I just snorkeled at Bathtub Beach, which was voted #1 by our readers.
That was Amanda Hicks years ago in a video about snorkeling in Florida. Now her family is preparing for her funeral after police say she died in a murder-suicide. I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome to Law&Crime's Sidebar podcast. Amanda Hicks was a middle school teacher in the Port St. Lucie area of Florida. On Saturday morning, police there say they were checking on a man at a home at the request of a family member. When they arrived, they said they heard a baby crying and saw two people laying on the floor through a sliding glass window. Police identified the couple as a 26-year-old woman and a 25-year-old man who were engaged. The 10-month-old little girl was their child. Family members identified the woman as Amanda Hicks. Police say Hicks's fiancé stabbed her sometime the night before on May 26th and then repeatedly tried to call a family member. A little less than an hour later, a surveillance camera captured the sound of a gunshot just before 1 a.m. Police say that little girl was left unattended in her crib for almost 11 hours. The couple had just recently moved into the apartment complex. Port St. Lucie police say they had not had any previous interactions with them. On an Angel Link page started by Hicks's family, they described her as an amazing mother to a beautiful baby girl. She was a great sister and was a beloved teacher and friend. She will be deeply missed and didn't deserve to leave this world so soon by someone else's hand. Hicks modeled in swimsuit competitions according to her TikTok page. She also posted videos there of her with her students. Joining me to discuss this case is someone who is all too familiar with issues of domestic violence. She is Christine Grillo. She is a former Deputy Bureau Chief of the Domestic Violence Bureau at the Kings County DA's office in Brooklyn, New York. Christine, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
What were your first thoughts when you read about this case involving Amanda Hicks and this person she was believed to be romantically involved with, who police in Port St. Lucie, Florida, say they believe he killed her and then took his own life?
Well, the typical murder-suicide, my mind, based on my experience, immediately goes to domestic violence issues. It's a crime of passion. It's a crime that is all too familiar, where the domestic violence had to have been there at some point and then escalated, where we had the murder and then the suicide. That's always a telltale sign. So my mind immediately went to, there must have been some domestic violence history, either behind the scenes that hadn't been revealed yet, that she hadn't reported yet, but absolutely it was a domestic violence situation.
I think this case is so disturbing on so many levels because we have a woman, she's 26 years old, a baby born last July, so just about a year old. Police go there to perform a welfare check and they hear this baby crying, and they look over and they find this gruesome discovery of mom, Amanda Hicks, laying there with a man next to her. I don't understand what gets someone to that point. There are so few details out and about this. So why does somebody go to these lengths? Is it just, if I can't have you, nobody can? Is there something else going on typically?
Yeah. It's the ultimate end of the power and control, the wheel that we all know too well. They're always in seek to control the other person in these domestic violence situations. So at the end of the day, they try so much, and then they get to a point where they need the ultimate control. And it's like you said, if I can't have you, no one can. And we don't know what happened, but one could surmise or perhaps suggest that she finally said no more and said, I have this 10-month-old baby. My priorities are to protect her. And maybe that emboldened her to address him and say, I'm not going to stand for this anymore. And then his response was, well, then I will show you the ultimate control over you and I will take your life. And it's unfortunately a situation I had come in contact with over my years, about 17 of them in the Domestic Violence Bureau, that you don't graduate to homicide. It's not like we start with slapping around and then it gets a little worse and then it gets a little worse and then we kill. No, it's sort of abuse, verbal or physical, that's very subtle. And then it becomes a little more controlling and you're controlled your friends are controlled, your time is controlled, and then ultimately it does just sort of jump to the most gruesome and most horrible crime of homicide or attempted homicide or something.
How do you investigate something like this? Because there won't be a prosecution in this case. The person believed to be the assailant has died by suicide, according to the police. Do you continue to investigate this to determine exactly what happened, or where do you go from here?
I don't believe that the police will continue. They'll investigate, in other words, to close the case and finalize the cause of death. As far as investigating into the defendant, I don't believe that they will. Let's face it, our police are so busy solving other crimes with defendants who are alive. I just think that they will talk to the coroner after an autopsy, figure out the cause of death, and probably just declare it a murder suicide, and that will be the end of it. I wonder what happens to the baby. I don't even think it's clear if he's the father, which
It's not,
is
yes. Mhm.
it's not. So then that goes to show that's something else. Had it been his child, I'm sad to say, I think he would have killed her too. But because it's not his child, he's not your, for lack of a better term, your everyday murderer who's going to go out and murder strangers for other reasons. This is a crime of passion. This is a crime based in just with domestic violence. These relationships begin with love. We can never forget that. These people met, they fell in love, they were together. So it is a crime of passion based in his warped sense of how much he loved her. So it even shows more, provides more proof that this was a domestic violence situation, because he had no reason to go after the baby. It wasn't his. It wasn't. It had nothing to do with him. So that's why he just let it go and finished his complete control over this woman by taking her life.
We hear so much about domestic violence, and sometimes people are aware of it going on. Oftentimes it's hidden. If somebody is in this situation and they're watching this, they're listening to Sidebar, what can they do to really recognize the signs that this is not normal?
They need to first, that's the first point. They need to accept the fact that it's not normal. And a lot of times in these situations, these victims of domestic violence have other issues going on of insecurity, of not feeling that they can control their own life and their own destiny. So they sort of are relying on someone who is providing for them or showing them that they can, I don't know, not control them so much in the beginning, but giving them what they think they need. So when it starts to go afoul, when it starts to feel that your friends, the defendant, the abuser, is keeping you from your friends or keeping you from your family, that's like a really good first sign that something's not right with this relationship. If your boyfriend or your husband can't join you with your family and the people that are important to you, and he's trying to isolate you from them, that's a really good sign that you need to ask a few more questions and tell your friends that you're starting to feel that something's wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of times the victims are embarrassed almost to admit that they've chosen unwisely in some guy, and they feel that it's going to get better, so they want to stick it out. And I guess I'm not suggesting that every bad relationship is a domestic violence situation, but there are signs. And when you start to see signs of your significant other isolating you, keeping you from your family, flying off the handle, unnecessarily trying to control your finances, trying to control your career, these are red flags that you need to really, really do some self, just some really look into it and really ask yourself the question, is this the right person for me? Is this the way it should be? And to not ever turn away from your friends and make your own decisions. And when you need to take that next step, there are millions of places that are willing, because domestic violence has become to the forefront. People want to help. You could go to a district attorney's office. You could say, I think I have a situation. You could go to the police and say, you think you have a situation. Whether or not they have something set up to help you right there, they certainly have phone numbers and people they can direct you to where you can get the help you need. And that's what I've always wished for any of the situations where I've had that they had some member of a family or a friend that they could rely on to say, this just isn't right. And if it doesn't feel right, it most likely isn't right. And you need to really self-reflect as to what is good for you, and that this situation and this relationship just may be something you should get out of sooner rather than later.
Well, someone was certainly concerned enough to call the police and ask for a welfare check. And that's how this all was discovered over the last weekend. Christine Grillo, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and expertise.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
And we do want to point out that there is a domestic violence hotline that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can get there and speak to somebody in English and Spanish. That number is 800-799-7233. That's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and we will see you next time.